everyone. Today we have Matt from Unit Sydney to discuss with me, Kat from the Artist Hustle, the importance of recovery and mobility after a show. The most important part, of course, is when you have the gig, you want to keep going, right? So let's not ignore this part that we can sometimes ignore.
Exactly, yeah. Recovery becomes a part of your role title. Your job is to be on stage 8 shows a week, 5 shows a week, and if you're not recovering properly, the chance of you hurting yourself or injuring yourself or losing your voice becomes a lot greater. So the better you recover after a show, before a show, the greater chance you can do it for a long period of time.
Yeah, so let's talk about musical theatre first,
Okay.
and we'll break it down into 3 sections.
Okay.
So if I'm a dancer, which I am,
I'm sure you are.
and you like to groove sometimes.
I'm a mover. I wouldn't say
You
I'm
are
a dancer.
a mover.
I'm a mover.
For those of you who don't know, we actually did Jersey Boys together in Australia, and Matt continued on his career out in the UK on the West End, so he has a lot of awareness about body, and then of course this is the gym that he currently owns and looks after, and he works with a lot of performing artists as well, so there's that switched in. But yeah, let's talk about dancers and the importance of recovery and mobility after a show. Not just a one-off show. Let's talk about a musical.
Yeah. I guess a musical is, as a dancer, you have a certain repetition, certain scenes you have to do most days. And if there's a certain move that you find quite challenging, that means that your right hip might get tighter than your left hip.
Like you're always kicking on the right leg.
Yeah, whatever that is.
High kick.
High kick, right. So if you're not stretching your flexors, your hamstrings, your adductors and your glute, then things over time get tighter. And it's the same thing with your shoulder. If you're not actually stretching out the deltoid and the rotator cuff, the things get tighter and tighter and tighter. And it's by the end of your 8-show run or your 5-show run, and you haven't done any recovery at all, the muscles get tighter and tighter and tighter. And after a certain time, they can't get any tighter and they're going to break or snap.
Yeah, and if it's not there, the body will start to compensate.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? The referred pain, especially from a knee injury, it'll get into your hip. If it's a shoulder injury, it'll come into your elbow, tendonitis, bicep, tricep. Everything has to work together. So if you have to do this role, I know we all work hard to keep a gig, but if you're working really, really hard on a certain thing and you want to get through it because you're ignoring that pain, something else is going to go as well, because that thing has to work harder. So if your hip flexors are tight, your lower back has to engage. If your back goes, you'll know it.
Yeah, and I think what's really important is to bring in the routine, even like not in the show, but in rehearsal mode.
Absolutely.
Don't just wait till opening night to put something in place, because you've already been rehearsing for 6 to 8 weeks using those same muscle groups. So what kinds of things should I be putting into practice?
I think it's a nighttime mobility routine, and it took me a long time. We're in Auckland, I don't know if you remember, but I pulled my back out really, really badly.
I don't remember.
And I was in bed for 3 days. And because I wasn't mobile, I wasn't flexible, I couldn't touch my toes, I was just singing and dancing and playing the music, but I wasn't paying attention to what I was actually doing. So until I injured myself, and I watched this beforehand obviously, I put it in a nighttime mobility routine of, let's say 4 to 5 moves that loosened up my body. So when I went to bed and slept those 6-10 hours, whatever it is, I woke up in a more limber state. I wasn't going to bed tight, because if you go to bed tight, chances are you're going to wake up tight. So hips, hamstrings, glutes, shoulders and back are probably your main things you want to loosen up before you go to bed, so you can maintain that range of motion and flexibility. So the more mobile you are and the more flexible you are, strength as well, the less chance of injuries.
And so would it be something that I would have to think about while I'm in the show to go, oh, I'm using this part of my body and this part of my body, so therefore I need to incorporate more strength, more stretching, more mobility?
I think when you first start a show, you're excited to do it, so you don't really pay attention to it. It's like, yeah, let's just do it.
You just do it.
Yeah, but after a while, like, oh, that feels... But then once you know the gig, you know how it sits and how I'm supposed to feel before the movement, you can kind of brace better. So once you understand, I have to use this muscle, this and this and this, and then have a rest and go again, you can stop and process, I'm about to use this, so let's focus on tight back, whatever it is, squeeze my bum, whatever the movement is, and then do it. But if you're focusing on it like you would with your recovery, the chances are you can do this for 6, 12, 18 months, whatever your gig is, and you can do it back to back to back without hurting yourself.
So if I was a singer, what do you think? I am a singer.
How dare you?
Oh, how dare you? Yes, so I'm a singer. I want to incorporate some sort of mobility, recovery, stretching into my show practice. What sorts of things would you recommend a singer?
A singer, it's basically the same as a dancer. The vocal cords, I'm sure, as a lot of you know, are a muscle, and if you don't lengthen or relax that muscle, it will get tighter and tighter, and your neck gets tense, and something's going to snap or break, nodules happen. So in a similar sense, it's the same as a dancer, where you have to do that nighttime routine as a cool down or a warm up. So your vocal warm up is just as important as a vocal cool down at the end of the night. So when I was doing the show, I would steam every night before bed, regardless. I would give myself a self massage, and I would stretch my shoulders, my pecs, my neck in the shower because it's all nice and warm, and then I would get into bed. But I even had the heat bags, the wheat packs you used to get. I used to live on that thing.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, Tartan. It was Tartan actually.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, and I think it's that thing too that singers may think, oh, well, I don't really need to do much.
I've never had a problem
around
before.
Here. I've never had a problem. I'm just singing. But you talk
all the time,
every day,
Yeah.
and if you didn't know, your tongue is the most understretched muscle.
Yeah.
And we tend to forget. And if that's tight, then you've got all of these muscles around the jaw that will get tight. Like everything is a domino effect.
Yeah.
And then of course it's going to come down to your neck, to your shoulders, to your back, to your chest. And then what is happening in your life environmentally, socially, culturally, all those things play a part.
Absolutely.
So you can't ignore that.
No, and it's also, as we talked about before, is preparation. So if you're preparing for the gig and the gig's done and you have to go back and sleep and then do it again, if you're not preparing yourself for the next day, then things get really, really hard. If you're going out for a few drinks, it's going to get really, really hard. If you're not sleeping the same way, it's going to get really, really challenging. And it's the same thing if your neck muscles are tight, your chest is tight, your deltoids are tight, everything gets pulled up, and you realise, well, I can't sing that note anymore because everything's just tight.
And you're like this.
That's right,
Yeah. All right, well, if I'm an actor
Yes.
and I have some sort of strength training, but I'm not really a mover, what sort of things could I incorporate in an 8-show week?
I guess it's the same thing. It's a vocal cool down, because if you are acting, and depending on what kind of character you're playing, it could be quite stressful as well. You have to de-stress and get out of that mindset before you go to bed, because if you go to bed in a heightened state, you're not going to sleep very well. So it'd be the same thing. It could be, that meditation before bed, that mobility routine to get out of that headspace of where you just were, so you can, be Cat and go to bed, not be the character you were just playing. So it'd be the same thing as the steaming, the vocal cool down, the stretching, just to release the tension that you were holding in whatever position you were, more mentally, I'd say. And meditation for me, 10 minutes, 15 minutes before bed was a game changer.
Doesn't seem like a lot, but can do a lot.
Absolutely, yeah. You just forget about what you're doing and just reset, repress, and then go again.
Yeah. And not to disregard the film and TV world too. So, singers, actors, dancers can also work on film and TV sets. But granted, the period of time in which they're working may not be as long.
Yeah.
Depending on what kind of role they play. Like, as an actor, you could have a leading role, which means you're on set all the time.
Yeah.
You're working really early mornings.
Weird hours, long hours.
But also times where you're doing nothing for a long time and then you're on.
Yeah.
So if I was a lead actor working on set, but I had a very physical role where I had to do training before it, it could be an action film or whatever, the same things apply when it comes to being on set. But the problem is that you're working weird hours.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for me if I want to work on recovery and mobility, but also dealing with these weird hours?
It'd be understanding what your body actually needs, because everyone has different needs and wants. We talked about it before. If your nutrition is on point and you're actually fueling yourself and you're prioritizing your protein, then the muscles and your recovery, you can perform for longer if you're having the right amount of calories in your diet. If you're under-caloried and you are working those weird hours, you are working 10 p.m. to 3 a.m., the body's not used to that. So if you're focusing on the right kind of food for your role, things get a bit easier. And when you can sleep, sleep. When you can drink, when you drink. When you can mobile, be mobile. When you can stretch, stretch. Those things become our priorities. When you're not shooting, your main purpose is to get ready to go and do it again.
So here's a question for you. You may not know the answer to it because you may not have experienced it. But for me, when I've been on set, I have the hair and the makeup and I'm all prettied up and I've got a lot of time off.
Yes.
And so a part of me goes, I'd love to do something where I can work out or do something with my body, but I'm restricted because of that. Do you have any suggestions on what I could do?
It's getting the body moving. If you have time off and you want to go watch some Netflix series, is that the best use of your time? Are you expanding not only your physicality, but are you broadening your mind? Could you be reading a book about something else? Could you be upskilling yourself with a new role coming up, or you want to learn some lines, or you want to do a vocal lesson, or you want to get a massage or physio? So if you have...
I don't know about massage.
No? Okay. If you want to, keep growing as a performer, you have to upskill consistently. And I think if you have downtime, that'd be your main goal, is to upskill.
If I want to do some sort of body work though, what do you think I could do?
It's any movement. So if you can move, it's, shoulder movements, squats, lunges. Jump on YouTube and you can Google a 10-minute yoga flow and it takes 10 minutes, funny that, to do a yoga flow. Any sort of movement that gets the toxins out of your body, I'd highly recommend.
Yeah, so as long as you're moving, I think is the key message there, right? Yeah, cool.
Mobility is king, guys. Mobility is king.
Because think about, if we were to give our body a metaphor, what would we say our body is like? Is it, because when we get told our bodies are like machines, but the reality is that everything that happens to us, we get affected by it.
Yeah.
And it gets stored in the body. So in saying that, what could you say we need to think of our bodies like?
That's a great question. I have no idea what the answer is.
I put you on the spot.
You did. I wasn't prepared. A metaphor.
Yeah.
Wow.
I guess where I'm going with it is that we can't ignore the small stuff.
Yeah.
And we can't ignore that life can impact us and we are not invincible. And to recognise that some days we can go harder than others and not to feel guilty if we don't go hard on one day.
I think factors of many things impact how you feel on a day-to-day basis. A lot of hormones, sleep, recovery, food, alcohol, stress, relationships. We all have lives outside of your role, your gig. If you're managing those things, then your job becomes a bit easier. So you can, intertwine and coincide the two. Life gets a bit easier. But if you're not managing this and that, when they clash, things get really hard. Your immune system comes down, you lose your voice, you hurt your shoulder, those kind of things happen. So if you're not managing with both your work life and your home life, then they can't butt fists.
Yeah. So if I wanted to get some sort of routine or suggestions on mobility and recovery, would you be a good person that I could talk to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think not just me in general, but any sort of fitness coach or physio who's been in the industry or has some sort of dealing with an athlete or performer can give you a general guideline on what your week should kind of look like.
Yeah.
And without stressing about this, stressing about that, what are your main priorities for the day, priorities for the week, priorities for the month, and tabling those things to make sure I'm working towards this, but not forgetting about this. So it's working together.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Matt, for your time.
You're welcome.
We'll jump to some other videos, but in the meantime, if you're in Sydney, in Alexandria, this guy is your guy. Thanks, Matt.
Okay.